I'm Jack. In the summer of 2018, my two closest friends, Emily and Chris, and I were driving through the Balkans. We followed a dirt road that led to a village so forgotten, its name had vanished from every map. A friend from Emily's college had lived near here as a child and said the village was abandoned years ago. It may sound foolish, but we thought camping there would be fun. As the sun bled from yellow to red, the village appeared. Walls coated in moss, windows shattered, doors hanging off their frames. The wind moved through the empty houses, dragging dust, carrying a low murmur, as if someone inside was whispering and never finishing the sentence. In the center of the square, half buried in the dirt, sat a gray stone. As we got closer, the carving became clear. A skull, not crude, but carefully etched, and strangely clean. How could something so old be this clean? While I was asking myself that, Chris was already crouched over it. "Look," he said, "the bottom is warm." He pressed his fingers to the edge, then he yanked his hand back, as if he'd touched hot metal. Right then, the wind stopped. The village fell into silence, and I heard a whisper, my name, Jack. My throat went dry. Emily tried to laugh. "It's just the wind," she said, but her voice was uneven. Chris started prying the stone, as if looking for something beneath it, restless, impatient. "Let's put it by the fire," he said. "Maybe it's a sign." We set up camp near the edge of the square. The fire crackled. Light licked the surface of the stone, and yet it seemed to swallow the light. Emily took out a small notebook. "I want to sketch this," she said. Her lines were shaky at first, then grew heavy, as if getting stuck in the hollows of the carving. When night fell, the village shrank even more. It was like the houses bent inward in the dark, squeezing the space between them. The fire warmed my face, but my back felt cold, as if someone was breathing on it. Chris sat by the stone. He pulled a small knife from his bag and began scratching the edge. "What are you doing?" I asked. I leaned over his shoulder. He was drawing a circle, 3 short marks inside. Before I could say anything, Emily asked softly, "What are you writing, Chris?" "It's watching me," he said, without looking up. I watched his eyes. His breath was short and uneven, like he'd been running, even though he hadn't moved. His voice sounded like Chris, and didn't. While my ears listened, something inside me, a door I couldn't see, opened a little wider. Hours thickened. I stood to tend the fire, picking up dry branches one by one. That's when I noticed the dirt around the stone looked burned, as if it had just been scorched. We hadn't built the fire there. "Emily," I said, "look at this." She kneeled by the stone, tracing a circle in the dirt with her fingertip. "Let's bury it and leave," she said. "At sunrise, this stone stays here." Chris lifted his head. "I can't," he said. "The stone talks to me." A single word slipped out of my mouth. "What?" The rest froze on my lips, because in the crackle of the fire, we heard something. Far off, between the houses, someone whispered. It said a name. Mine. Jack. I grabbed my flashlight. My boots hit the stone steps. Wind-borne dust brushed my face through broken glass. Near the entrance to the village, a fallen door stood like a crooked tooth. I swung the light. No one. But the sound moved, as if it were coming from inside the stone. Back at the tents, Emily struggled to speak. "There's a habit here," she said. "A weight, like a stone on your chest." Chris stayed by the stone, eyes unblinking, staring into the hollows. "It's counting us," he said quietly. 1, 2, 3. Sleep didn't come. Whenever my eyelids began to drop, a whisper, a nervous breath, pulled me back up. I checked my watch. 3:12 a.m. For a moment, it felt like the whole village was waiting for that number. 3. When one arrives, the other 2 follow. Just before dawn, the fire dimmed on its own. Emily tore a page from her notebook, muttering as she wrote. I couldn't catch the words, but the pencil traced the same sentence over and over. Chris's back was to us. His shoulders didn't rise and fall in a single breath, but in short, chopped tremors. When the sun finally rose, behind the stone houses, for a heartbeat, the village looked real again. And I looked at the stone once more. Its eye sockets, deeper than last night, as if someone had carved them all night, reaching into nothing. Emily stood, her face pale as ash. "Let's go," she said. "We bury it now, and we leave." Chris shook his head slowly. His fingers grazed the edge of the stone like he was petting it. "Don't touch it again," I said. "It's late. We can't stay here." As I finished the sentence, a cold drained down my stomach into the ground, as if the stone was connected to something much deeper under the soil, like a root into a vein. And I felt that vein knew my name. As the day turned to night, the sky fell over us like a purple curtain. The village grew silent once again. The fire's light didn't reflect off the stone. It was being pulled into it. Emily sat far from the stone, her arms wrapped around her knees, biting her lips. Chris was still beside it, barely moving. His eyes were locked on the darkness inside the stone, as if something in there was staring back at him. "Chris," I said, but he didn't answer. He only brushed his fingertips across the edge of the stone. Then a faint hiss came from beneath it, like a breath, and the eyes carved into the skull on its surface flickered for a moment, as if something inside had just awakened. Emily screamed and fell back. "There's something there!" she shouted. But within a blink, the light vanished, as if it had never glowed at all. Then the wind started again, but this time it wasn't cold, it was wet. Not rain, but like the breath of something alive. And that humming sound echoed through the empty houses. A voice, not from the wind, a woman's voice, from far away. "Jack." Every muscle in my body locked up. I grabbed Emily's hand. "Get inside the tent," I said. "Chris, come on." But Chris didn't move. He was kneeling before the fire, bent over the stone, murmuring something. I couldn't hear it at first, but as I got closer, I realized he was repeating one word. "Jack, Jack, Jack, Jack." "Enough!" I shouted, grabbing his shoulder. But the moment I touched him, his skin was ice cold. When he turned to me, his irises were completely black. And when he spoke, it wasn't his mouth that moved. "The stone has chosen," he said. His voice came from two places at once, part of it from him and part from inside the stone. Emily came out of the tent. She was holding the flashlight, trembling. "Hold the light," I said. But she lowered her hand. The flashlight dropped to the ground, and her eyes turned pure white. Only one word left her lips. "3 has come." Then a rumble from beneath the stone shook the ground. The fire went out. The village was swallowed by darkness. I stepped back, and at that moment, the soil around the stone began to rise. Something black, like smoke, crawled out. Not smoke, but a shadow trying to take form. It had a human shape, but no face. For a moment, I felt cold seep into my chest. My heart forgot to beat. The shadow looked at me, but it had no eyes. Just two dark holes, like the ones carved in the stone. Chris was still kneeling, as if he belonged to the stone now. He placed both hands on it and smiled. "He's looking at me," he said. Then, without lifting his head, he whispered, "Jack, he saw you too." At that moment, the stone cracked. A sound echoed, a dry snap, like a bone breaking. But it didn't come from the stone. It came from inside it. The earth shifted. A hand, a black, dust-covered hand, reached up from the ground. Emily started screaming, but her voice was cut off, as if something pressed against her throat. Only the sound of breathing remained. I was frozen. I tried to lift my hand, but I couldn't move. That hand gripped the edge of the stone, and a face appeared. The skull carved into the stone, but now it was alive. Black smoke poured from its eye sockets, and through that smoke came a whisper. 3 has come. The last thing I heard was Emily screaming my name, then darkness. When morning came, the village was silent. Emily didn't speak. Chris was gone. The stone was split in two, and the ground beneath it was still breathing. I put Emily in the car. She didn't say a word the entire drive. Her hands were clenched between her knees. She just stared out the window, but her eyes were still completely white. When we reached town, they took her to a doctor. "There's nothing wrong," they said. "Her eyes are perfectly fine." But Emily never spoke again. The police searched for Chris, went into the forest. They never found him. After a while, they said, "He must have gotten lost." But I knew he didn't get lost. The stone took him. Days passed. I went home. I thought it was over. But that night, at 3:12 a.m., my phone lit up on its own. The Notes app was open. A new note, just one sentence. "You're the third." My heart froze. I deleted it, but it came back, again and again. I threw my phone, turned off the light, got into bed, but in the room, there was breathing, as if someone was standing beside me. Slowly, I opened my eyes. In the dark, a face, not a human face, the skull from the stone, but now it was alive. From its eye sockets, black smoke poured out. The smoke rose to the ceiling, then fell back down. A whisper was right at my ear. "3 has come. Your turn." I looked at the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, but I wasn't smiling. My reflection was... The whisper came from the walls. The floor trembled, and that sound, like a bone breaking. I realized the stone was whole again. Then, silence. A silence that didn't even breathe. My ears rang, and through the dark, one last breath. Jack. Since that day, nothing has been the same. Every night, at 3:12, I hear it again. Someone's behind my door, breathing, waiting. And I still remember where I buried that stone. But yesterday, someone sent me a message. In the photo, they were holding it.